Who will buy my shallots? Once upon a time, there was a young man who was still unmarried and made a living as a farmer. One day, he carried his axe into the forest to chop firewood. While he was busy cutting trees, he saw a crow carrying a baby sparrow and landing on a rock near where he was working. Seeing that, he suddenly felt pity for the little bird, thinking it was about to fall into the mouth of a cruel predator. The young man picked up a rock and threw it at the crow. The crow angrily flew away, still shouting threats of revenge. The young man rushed over to the baby sparrow, which was barely breathing, and tried to help it recover. After a moment, the sparrow regained consciousness and was able to fly again. It thanked the man and asked him to wait, saying it wanted to give him a gift. A moment later, the little bird returned, holding a tiny jar in its beak. It placed the jar beside the man and said, "This is magical water that can make young people grow tall and strong, with flawless skin like no one else." Then the bird flew away. The young man sat down, full of curiosity, and opened the jar. Inside, he found it filled with a fragrant liquid that smelled sweet and fresh. He thought, "This must be the kind of thing only used by ladies at the royal court. It's too fancy for someone like me." So he carefully closed the jar, put it away, and went back to chopping wood. As time passed, he became busy with work and daily life, and he eventually forgot all about the little jar. A few years later, after much hardship, the young man finally got married. His wife was also from a farming family, with muddy hands and feet from working all year round. Her skin was dark and rough. But the couple loved each other very much. One day, while the husband was away working in the fields, his wife stayed home to sweep and clean the house. She saw a small jar hanging from a rafter and curiously took it down to open. When she smelled the sweet fragrance, she thought it was some kind of perfumed hair oil. She boiled water for a bath, then poured the fragrant liquid over her body to rinse. Unexpectedly, after the bath, she became dazzlingly beautiful. Her skin was fair and smooth, her appearance graceful beyond compare. The magical water had splashed onto some shallot plants growing nearby, and strangely, the shallots grew large, round, and fragrant like pomelos. When her husband returned from the fields and saw her, he didn't recognize his own wife. She looked like a fairy descended to earth, and if she hadn't spoken, he wouldn't have believed it was truly her. When she mentioned the fragrant jar, the man suddenly remembered the gift from the little sparrow 3 years ago. Looking at his beautiful wife with admiration, he smiled and retold the old story to her. From that day on, the man became deeply devoted to his wife and couldn't bear to be away from her. His farm work began to fall behind, but staying at home and gazing into her eyes all the time wasn't helping, so he had no choice but to get back to work. To keep her in his thoughts, he hired an artist to paint a portrait of his wife. Every time he went out to the fields, he would hang the portrait by the edge of the rice paddy so he could look at it and feel comforted. One day, while he was plowing the field, with the portrait hanging on a pole, suddenly a crow swooped down out of nowhere, grabbed the portrait and flew off with it. The man saw this and shouted, but the crow flew high and far away in a flash. Seeking revenge for the stone that had once hit its beak, the crow snatched the portrait and flew all the way to the capital city, where it dropped the painting in the palace courtyard. The palace guards, seeing something strange, picked it up and brought it to the king. When the king saw the beautiful painting, He was mesmerized. He stared at it for a long time and declared, "Among all the beauties in the royal palace, none is as beautiful as the woman in this painting. Surely heaven sent this crow to guide her to me." Immediately, the king gave orders to a high-ranking official and a company of imperial guards to find the woman in the painting and bring her to the palace. The official was sent out to villages and provinces, searching through alleys and markets to find her. To make the search more effective, they organized festivals in many places, inviting all locals to come. Each time a large crowd gathered, they would bring out the painting and pretend they had found it by chance, then waited to see who would recognize the woman. One day, they arrived at the village where the husband and wife lived and held a festival for 3 days and nights. As expected, the husband was tricked into attending. The moment he saw the painting, he couldn't help but rush forward to claim it. The guards immediately captured him like a bird in a trap and brought him home. There, they found the woman who looked exactly like the one in the painting. Overjoyed, they took her back to the capital in a royal carriage, leaving behind the poor husband who collapsed in grief and sorrow. After being taken to the palace, the beautiful woman did not smile, did not speak, wore no fine clothes, did not brush her hair, and allowed no one to come near. Though the king was overjoyed to have such a beauty brought to the palace, he grew increasingly sad and anxious, for nothing could make her smile or even speak a word. The king issued a royal decree across the land. Whoever can make the beautiful woman smile will be handsomely rewarded with a high-ranking position and great riches. Hearing this, from famous scholars to sorcerers, all came to the capital to try their best, using jokes, spells, and tricks in hopes of getting the woman to laugh and earn the king's reward. But no matter what they tried, nothing worked. As for the poor husband, ever since his wife had been taken away, he had lost all interest in food or work. When he heard a rumor that someone had finally made the woman in the palace smile, and the king was rewarding that person, he realized his wife must be in the royal court. He decided to go find her. Before leaving, he grabbed his old shallot baskets and hung them on his carrying pole. When he reached the capital, he walked straight to the front of the palace gates and called out, "Green shallots in my basket, old ones in a jar. Who will buy my shallots today? Please pity me from afar." The man's call echoed louder and louder through the palace. As his voice grew stronger, his wife's face gradually lit up. Finally, she turned to the maid and said, "Bring in the shallot seller for me." When she saw her husband, she smiled for the first time. Seeing the woman smile at last, the king was delighted, but also stunned, for he realized that even his giant shallots and treasures couldn't compare to this man's simple presence in making her happy. The king turned to the man and said, "Bring your shallot baskets here and take off your clothes immediately." The king took off his royal robe and placed it on the man, officially giving up the throne. Then he made the man memorize the shallot, selling chant and walk around the palace doing the same act. When the woman heard the chant again, she burst into laughter. The king was even more convinced that the man was her true match, and made him king. But suddenly, the woman whispered, "We must hurry and climb the golden throne now." The husband rushed forward, and together they climbed onto the golden throne, just as palace women and maids bowed before them. From that day forward, the man became king, and he lived happily ever after with his wife.